Hello, my favorite students in the whole wide world. Just kidding, but really, it's your favorite teacher in the whole wide world here. So today we're going to talk about everyone's favorite shape, circles. The standard form of a circle is this formula right here. I can tell you right now, you're going to need to know this formula. Where you have x minus h, quantity squared, plus y minus k, quantity squared, is equal to r squared, where r is your radius, and hk is the center of your circle. So if you had just the most basic x squared plus y squared equals 1, everyone's favorite unit circle, that would be a circle centered at the origin, 0, 0, because it would be x minus 0 squared plus y minus 0 squared. Oops, put that over there. So you'd have a circle centered at the origin, 0, 0, radius 1. Would look like this. Draw your circle. Beautiful circle. So, putting into standard form. When you're putting this into standard form, the first thing you have to do is you have to identify your center. Well, actually, the first thing you have to do is you have to complete the square. And I don't know if you remember how to complete the square, so we'll review it real quick. What I want everyone to do is to group all your x's together. So what we have here, we have an x squared and a negative 6x. And then I want you to leave a blank. Then you have your y's. So we have a y squared plus 2y. Leave another blank for that. Take all your constants over to the other side. So this equals negative 6. And then what you have to do when completing the square is you have to take into account both of the blanks on the left side, because what you do to one side of the equation you always have to do to the other. So since we're adding 2 blanks on the left side, we need to add 2 blanks on the right side. Now, for those of you that don't remember, what you do when completing the square is you take your b value here, you divide it by 2, and then you square it. So if I took negative 6 and I divided it by 2, I obviously get negative 3. Negative 3 squared is 9. So what I do is I add 9 here, and what I do to the left side of the equation, I have to do to the right side of the equation. So I put a 9 there. What this does is this factors very nicely now to x minus 3 squared. It's both plus signs, plus, factors of 9 that add up to 6, 3 and 3. So you really have x minus 3 quantity squared. We're going to do the exact same thing with the y. So we take our b value, divide it by 2. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. 1 squared is 1. And what I do to the one side, I have to do to the other. Factoring here, this factors to y plus 1 quantity squared equals negative 6 plus 9 plus 1. So negative 6 plus 10, I get 4. So my equation here is x minus 3 squared plus y plus 1 squared equals 4. If you recall the last slide, standard form of the equation is x minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared equals r squared. So going back to our equation, what we have here, our center would be, our x value would be 3, and if you recall, this is usually y minus k, so in order for it to be a plus 1, we had to have been subtracting negative 1. So we have 3, negative 1 as our center. This 4 is equal to r squared, so therefore our radius, r, is equal to 2. And that's all you have to do here. So if we look at number 2, 9 halves x squared plus 9 halves y squared equals 1. In our typical equation, x minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared equals r squared. You'll notice that the coefficient on both my x and my y is 1. It always needs to be 1. It has to be 1. What do I have here? I have a coefficient that isn't 1. So in order to get rid of these 9 halves on both this x squared and this y squared, I'm going to multiply both sides of my equation by 9 halves. Distributing my 9 halves here, I'm simply left with x squared plus y squared equals 9 halves. Now, if I just have an x squared and a y squared here, and looking at my typical formula that I have over here, h and k have to be 0. So I am centered at 0, 0, and I have a radius of what? Well, r squared equals 9 halves. R would then be what? So take the square root of 9, square root of 2, 3 over radical 2, or 3 radical 2 over 2, however you write it. Now, graphing these. If I were to just do a quick sketch of these, if I go back to this first problem, I am centered at 3, negative 1. So there's my center. I'm going to have to extend this. My radius is 2. The easiest way to graph this is to simply go from your center and go 2 units in all 4 directions. So if I go 2 units up, I have a point right there. That would be a radius of 2. 2 units to the right would put me here. 2 units to the left, 2 units down would put me here. And I need to just try my best, and I said try your best, to make it look as circular as possible. Obviously it's not going to be perfect. For number 2 here, I'm centered at the origin, 0, 0, have a radius of 3 radical 2 over 2, so say this is 3 radical 2 over 2. Same thing, I go out away from my radius, or my center in all 4 units, equal length of my radius, and draw my circle. Now, what I do not want to see is I do not want to see diamonds or anything like that. Draw a circle as best as you can. Alright, so here we are given our center and our radius. We are now asked to write it in standard form. Once again, recalling standard form. X minus h, quantity squared, plus y minus k, quantity squared, equals r squared, where hk is our center and r is our radius. Well, this is just simply filling in. X minus h would be 2, quantity squared, don't forget your squareds, it happens a lot, plus y minus a negative 1 becomes y plus 1, quantity squared, equals the square root of 5 squared. Remember, the square root of 5 squared is simply 5. That would be your answer. Basic as that. Now, number 4 is a little bit trickier. If I can get this upside down. Alright, so number 4 is a little bit trickier because we are given a center and we are given a point. So if we fill in what we know, we have a computer that's going insane. X minus 0 quantity squared is simply x squared, plus y minus 5 quantity squared equals r squared. We don't know r. But what we do know is another point that is on this circle. So we have an xy here that would satisfy this equation. So what we can do is we can put in our xy point and then solve for r. So if I plug in 2 for x and 3 for y, I come down to 4 plus 3 minus 5 is negative 2. Negative 2 squared is once again 4. So I come down to r squared being 8. Now if you wanted to go ahead and solve for r, that's great, but what we really needed to know was r squared. That's what we were looking for. So our final answer, once we plug everything in here, is x squared plus y minus 5 quantity squared equals 8. And you're done. Alright, so now we need to find the x and y intercepts. So finding the x and y intercepts, well, let's go ahead and graph this actually. If we're thinking about this, we are centered where? The center is -5, 4, remember, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared. So my center is -5, 4. Think about this here. Minutes both way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2. Kind of about there. We're gonna go. R is equivalent to 5, so we have to go 5 units in all 4 directions. Here, 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 and here. That was beautiful. Let me try that again. Equally as beautiful, but you get the point. We'll move on. What we're trying to find is we're trying to find our x-intercepts here and here, along with our y-intercepts. If you notice here, it looks like we only have one y-intercept. Could be 2, though. My drawing's really, really bad. So let's start with our x-intercepts. What we want to know is, we know our y value here. Our y value is 0. So we need to find our x value. So our y value is 0. We need to find our x value. So we have x plus 5 squared plus we know y is 0. So we plug in 0 there. Now it's just a matter of solving. So I still have x plus 5 quantity squared, but this time it's equal to, well, 0 minus 4 is -4, not equal to, plus -4 squared 16 equal to 25. Subtract my 16 over. X plus 5 squared equals 25 minus 16 is 9. Square root. I'm left with x plus 5 equals plus or minus 3. That's important there. You have to have your plus or minus. So I finish with x equaling -5 plus or minus 3. Well, that's going to give me 2 solutions. -5 plus 3 is -2. And -5 minus 3 is -8. So if you look at my drawing, I mean, yeah, it kind of makes sense there. So my 2 x-intercepts would then be the ordered pairs -2, 0, and -8, 0. You're going to do the exact same thing with y-intercepts. So this time, we know our x value is 0. We need to find our y value. So, with our x value being 0, we're going to have 0 plus 5 quantity squared plus y minus 4 quantity squared equals 25. Well, 5 squared is 25 plus y minus 4 quantity squared equals 25. What happens here is my 25s actually end up canceling each other out, and I'm left with y minus 4 quantity squared equals 0. Well, when I square root both sides, the square root of 0 is still 0. So I'm left with y minus 4, equals 0. So y is 4 is my only solution, which means right here we only have one y-intercept. So my answer here would be 0, 4. Alright, the last problem we're going to do on circles, and then we're going to move on to parabolas. So we have x squared plus 8x plus y squared plus 2y plus 9 equals 0. this is much, much, much easier to find your x and your y intercepts if it is in standard form. So we need to put it in standard form. I've already kind of got it grouped by x's and y's here. So we want to do the same thing we did in the beginning. We want to complete the square. So first thing first, we have our x squared plus 8x plus our blank. Then we're going to have plus y squared plus 2y plus our blank. And that is going to be equal to, take our 9 over, negative 9, plus our first blank, plus our second blank. Do not forget what you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. So if you recall from earlier, we're going to take b over a and square it. Not b over a, b over 2. Sorry about that. B over 2 and square it. So 8. 8 over 2 is 4. 4 squared is 16. So I'm going to add 16 to both sides here. For our y's, 2 over 2 is 1. 1 squared is 1. So I put 1 there. So factoring, this becomes two positive signs. So same thing. It's going to always factor to the exact same thing. That's why we're doing this. X plus 4, x plus 4. So this becomes x plus 4 quantity squared. Plus, this one will factor to y plus 1 quantity squared. And it will equal negative 9 plus 17, positive 8. So now, I have x plus 4 quantity squared plus y plus 1 quantity squared equals 8. And now you do that exact same thing we did last problem. So if we start with our x-intercept, remember our x-intercept is question mark, we don't know, 0. Our y value is 0. So we're going to evaluate the function with a y value of 0. So we're going to have x plus 4 squared plus 0 plus 1 squared, and that is going to be equal to 8. Well, x plus 4, we don't know yet, we gotta leave that, quantity squared, plus 1, 1 squared is 1, equals 8, just solve. X plus 4 squared equals 7, square root, both sides. We now have x plus 4 equals plus or minus radical 7. X equals whatever negative 4 plus or minus radical 7 is. Those would be my two x-intercepts. And I can go ahead and write that as negative 4 plus or minus radical 7, 0. That represents 2 points. For my y-intercept, we know our x value this time. Our x value is there. We don't know what our y value is. So we evaluate the function if x was 0. So we have 0 plus 4 quantity squared plus y plus 1 quantity squared equals 8. This becomes 16 plus y plus 1 quantity squared equals 8. And what happens here is I actually end up with y plus 1 quantity squared equaling negative 8. Now, the problem with this is I have something squared equaling a negative number. And if you recall, whenever you square something, it's positive. So this actually can't happen. So my answer would be no solution. My answers here would be imaginary. There's no solution. So what would this look like graphically? Well, imagine something where I would have an x-intercept but no y-intercept. So I could have a circle over here. 2 x-intercepts, no y-intercept. Just another solution. So this is our real quick 20-minute rundown of circles. We are now going to flip videos and move on to parabolas.